you could see it on their face that it was like an immediate kick in the gut. Like, I knew that was going to suck, and I knew that was going to be slow, but I didn't think I was going to be that slow.
What is happening, Coach? I'm just off the road.
Happy
Monday.
We are, no, I would say we're late, but we're not. We're right on time. A little later than usual on Monday, but welcome. Crushing Iron Podcast, episode 289?
I hope so. Yeah, that's right.
Somewhere around there. Listen, we are flying by the seat of our pants as usual, but I got back here in Chattanooga earlier today around 11 after a 3:45 a.m. departure from Delaware, Ohio, and you pulled a late-nighter drive from Delaware or the Columbus area to Louisville last night, and then just got back probably not even 15 minutes ago in Nashville. But busy day, lots of travel. We were at Ohio 70.3, but hey, we got things to do. We preach consistency, so it would be we'd be hypocritical if we didn't show up today and get the job done. It might be a little cleaner and crisper and shorter than usual, but hey, we have a lot to talk about. We had a great weekend, and again, welcome. Crushing Iron Podcast. We come to you twice a week, and we have been for what's going on almost 3 years. We appreciate you joining us. We cover all things triathlon, life, the balance between the two. We go to a lot of races. Our team travels and participates and competes at tons of races, and we had a great weekend. But hey, we appreciate you joining us, and for our frequent flyer listeners, we appreciate your patience today.
Yeah, and you said consistency, and I have to, that driving back, I did do late night last night. My dog was in Louisville, and I got up this morning and drove home, and man, I was really looking forward to a nap when I got home, but we had the time changes a little bit mixed up, and so we're ending up doing it like a compromise, which is great. But the consistency part, as much as I want to take a nap, I'm so glad we're doing it. It's just that thing about
just
getting out the door,
baby.
Just keep showing up, and that's what we've done.
Put the mic on and just showing up.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're here. We had a good weekend. Man, if you listen to the last few episodes, we kind of went into Ohio 70.3. We were there this weekend, and I gotta say, huge congrats to everybody. There's a lot of races that went on this weekend. I know Santa Rosa, Ironman Canada 70.3, and the full. And then you had Lake Placid, which had tough conditions, and Ohio, which is traditionally, I think a lot of people consider that a fairly fast course. And last year, I know the conditions were, I would say, fairly ripe for the taking, even though it wasn't wetsuit legal. But this was a much tougher day. The sun was out. It was significantly warmer this year than it was last year. And it was very windy on the bike. And while I think we all go into races and events and look at the bike course and think, oh, there's not that many turns. It's flat. Sweet. I can't be more excited. There is nothing more disheartening than biking into a headwind for a long period of time. There's just nothing more. It rips your soul right out of you. And that's what a lot of the athletes encountered yesterday, especially the ones who got in the water a little bit later. As you all know, the wind kind of picks up as the day goes on, and which I think is another kind of interesting scenario. But it was a tough day all around. I know Lake Placid had its own challenges, but let's be honest, as all races do. Rarely have we ever participated in a race and been like, you know what, that was pretty much perfect. But so first off, congrats to everyone who participated and got off the race course and did their best. And I think you should always be commended for that. And we appreciate all the athletes that we got to stop and chat and have some conversations with that listen to the podcast. We always are really humbled and by just the appreciation and the kind of outgoing support that you and I both get at races. And I kind of jokingly said, I was talking to one of our athletes, Katie Letchworth, and this guy came up to me. I can't remember your name, so sorry, buddy. But he came up and he had some very kind words to say about the podcast and everything. And I kind of looked at her and I said, yeah, I never would have guessed that in my late 30s my job would take me somewhere to Delaware, Ohio, with strange men walking up to me in spandex, telling me they appreciated what I do. And you just kind of never. This is, you like to plan our lives out, and if you wanted, even more evidence that we have zero control and our best efforts to plan out our life basically just fly by the wayside, that is it.
You just take a fork in the road, and it ends up in Spandexville, man.
Yeah, I mean, standing out the stadium at Ohio Wesleyan with strange middle-aged men walking up to me in spandex telling me they appreciate me. Hey, but you know what? I appreciate them. So, but it was a good weekend.
Yeah, and there was that other story about the volunteer who we don't know who it was, but a couple of our athletes came up, and as they were running, it was,
please identify yourself.
Yeah, please identify yourself. As several of our athletes shared that as they were coming up to the aid station, one of the volunteers would say, "Now grab 2 handfuls of ice, like Coach Robbie says."
Robbie says, put two handfuls of ice in your hand. But no, it was So if you're in the closed Crushing Iron Facebook group and you are that volunteer, please identify yourself. We'd love to say thank you. But yeah, we were there. And again, this is a podcast where we talk about all things triathlon and everything involved with swimming, cycling, and running. Combining those, we talk about popular races. But the most important thing I think we often do, and that's honestly some of the biggest feedback we get, is we try to intersect that into life, and how obviously and hopefully triathlon intersects with your life, and it should be a hobby, and it should complement your life, and it should be kind of a symbiotic relationship with one not totally dominating the other. But that's what we do. And this is I raced Ohio 70.3 last year, and I spectated this year. I do have to say, I don't want to go into a huge Ohio 70.3 race recap because I didn't do it. I do want to talk about a few things I kind of noticed as a spectator. But if you've never met Ken Hammond is the race director at Ohio 70.3 and is going to be also the race director for the new Muscleman 70.3 that'll be taking on next year. You and I kind of joked about the fact last week that we hoped he would get another one, and hey, there he did. Mm-hmm. But he is one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. He is very unassuming and incredibly kind, and we had a great conversation with him on Saturday, the day before the race. I saw him all over the place on Sunday, and got to share a few words with him as well on Sunday, which kind of ended up being kind of a hard day. But he is as nice and as good as it gets. And I'll share one quick story that he was. I was at the swim exit, and this poor volunteer lady was like the only person trying to prevent people from like running across, the swim exit, because people just do. I'll get into that later. People just do whatever they want to, and this poor lady, and she stopped him dead in his tracks. when he was trying to go across, she was like, "No, sir, you can't go here." And here he is, like the race director of the entire event, and she goes, "No, but I'm staff." She goes, "No, sir, you have to wait." And he looked at her and he goes, "I really appreciate what you do. I thank you for doing your job." And she kind of looked him over and saw his tag, and he was like, "Oh, you're the race director. Okay, yeah, carry on." But he was so complimentary, where some people I think have been like, "You don't know who I am." Like, I am the guy that's putting this whole event on. He was actually like, "Hey, thank you for doing your job." And I just thought that was kind of like a very small window into what, in my experience with you and I, having conversations with him being on the podcast, email exchanges, and then just talking to him in person. He's a fantastic guy and a wonderful racer.
Quiet all weekend, and we get home and she starts barking.
Poor Maddie, she missed you.
She misses the male lady. Yeah, man. I don't know. I drove back the whole way, and I just, speaking of Ken, I mean, he had a really hard day on Sunday, and I want to just send out my condolences to him, and I want to send out my condolences to the family of the woman who lost her life on the bike course, and the husband was racing, and I just feel terrible about the whole thing. It's just such a sad story, and we're just, everybody's out there trying to enjoy the day and have fun, and then something like that happens, and I just don't know what to say about it, but I just want to, Yeah, there's
nothing. I mean, you said it great. I mean, it's there aren't any words. like you can't. I don't think that's like one of those circumstances where you really can't say anything to make it better, but everybody wants to say something. And I think you said it well. And I spoke to him in person after the fact, and you could just tell it was just like, I think so many times, like we've had Steve Del Monte on here too, and he in his own right is another fantastic race director, and I think like they're the guys, like that's like I never want to be a race director.
No.
Like I have zero, like nothing. I don't want a part of it, and because I can't think of a more thankless job, especially with the amount of responsibility and anxiety and the pressure you have to basically take care of, X number of athletes over the course, even though that's not ultimately up to you, right? Because they all make their own decisions and things happen and accidents happen and things are unfortunate. But like you talk about a thankless job,
yeah.
And so I just think that, on the other side of it, like if you have a great experience, like, really thanks, like really, really show your appreciation. Like that's something that I try and do. This is on a infinitely smaller scale, but having worked in the food service industry for so long, like servers, I wouldn't call them waitresses and waiters, like are for the most part very underappreciated, and I think people just kind of take advantage of them. And so I think everyone should have or should work in the food industry or the hospitality industry at some point. I think you learn a lot about people and yourself and being kind and forgiving. But if when I have like a really, really good experience, I always ask for the server to get their manager. And of course they're all like freaking out. They're like, oh my God. And then I just tell them like what a wonderful job they did. Because I just think it's like, I think so many times like we go through life and we expect and assume that people like that, I'm not articulating this very well, but I think we're just going to go through life and assume that maybe our closest friends or our coworkers or our employees or our bosses or our coaches or our friends, whatever it is, relationships or family, like they just assume that we love them and we appreciate them. But nothing can replace just like a kind word, like, what, I really appreciate what you did. Or like walk up to him, like, what, like this was a good experience. I had, regardless of the day. Because I think sometimes it's because when you put on an event that's so experiential that with an athlete, it could have been the perfect race day execution from the race director's standpoint. But if an athlete has like a bad day, they're so ornery.
Yeah.
That one little thing, they're like, everything is pretty good. But I'll tell you what, that 18-year-old volunteer over at aid station number 19, like the cup was half full of ice, and I was really expecting that glass to be full. And I'm telling you, I ended up kind of overheating there the last 2 miles, and I really think that would have helped me. And so I just, and like, just get a grip,
yeah,
right? And I just think it's something that we could, and myself included, that we could always do better. I'm not the greatest at taking compliments. Frankly, I suck at it.
Come on, you're a great guy.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike. But that
nice job there, man.
Thank you. I'm practicing. But I think I know it might sound small and this is not triathlon related, but like when these people put on these events, it's an enormous amount of responsibility. It's an enormous amount of work. And I just think that we should all go above and beyond to thank them and at least let people know, not because just signing up for your race, that's not telling them that you like the race. It's telling them that you want to do it, you like it. And so I just think it's something important that we could all do better at.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that goes between athletes too. And I'm guilty of that. I mean, I'm the first one to bitch about little things, and I was actually thinking about that on my drive back too. And my car, the air conditioning is really marginal right now, and it's pretty hot driving back. And I have my dog.
Yeah. You're marginal. Yeah.
It's to the point where I have to. It's hot out, and I was rolling my windows down just to get the airflow. It was, and my dog is she's in the front seat, Maddie, and she's got the tongue starting to get longer and longer and getting hot, and I'm getting worried. And so I pulled over to exit and was going to put her in the back seat because the shade was back there, and I thought, well, maybe it's a little cooler. So I got off to this exit ramp, and I opened the passenger door to make her jump out, and she jumped over to the driver's seat. I think she was scared I was going to leave her on the road or something. I don't know. She's a rescue dog. But then I went back around the other side, and she jumped over the seat again, and I just decided to leave her there. And she knocked the coffee over on the thing, and I started like getting pissed about like my life. Oh man, what's going on? And then I was like, man, nobody cares about that. And it's like nobody cares about my problems. And I think just to kind of bring this back into it's really, it's sometimes it's difficult to obviously have access or find a race director, but man, can we just be better with each other and just thankful, about somebody maybe giving us a little more room on the bike rack, or, like not bitch, I just little things. I was just saying to you, you spend all day, and I've done this many times. Like I've probably been to
more than I have.
Yeah, I've spectated so many races in my day, and it's a long, long, long day. And you walk around, and I just get to a point. I'm taking photos and videos, and I just observe a lot, and it's amazing to see the gratitude and the love and just the support of people, and like these people like doing things they never thought they could do and all that stuff. And then there's this whole other sect that I see kind of rear its ugly head with sort of kind of ego, cocky kind of things, and it just. I just don't see I don't see any place for this kind of stuff, man. And I just think we all need to be grateful that we're doing it. I mean, we obviously want to do it for a reason, because it's sort of, I've talked about it before, kind of like, we have that childhood where we're playing and having fun, and we can escape from life. And I think we all seek that. And then to get into that arena and get corporate with it all, you know what I mean? Like, this guy's not accountable, or whatever. There's a lot of that going on, and it's like, it just gets under my skin, kind of.
Well, it's because of the easiest solution we have is to just blame somebody.
Yeah.
And then I heard a great quote on one of the many podcasts I was listening to on my lonely drive this morning, and it was basically said, are you like, don't participate in the toxicity of the world.
Yeah.
Like, are you participating in increasing the toxic? And that's what basically, like complaining and hatred, all those kind of things, like that just increases the toxicity of the world. And let's be honest, there's already way too much, right? And and I'll be honest too. Like, I was a little bit, you saw me. I was a little bit grumpy yesterday.
A little bit sassy, man.
I was a little bit sassy.
It's hot out, long day.
That way sometimes, but I guess the thing that stuck out to me yesterday from a spectator standpoint, and this goes to spectators and this goes to athletes as well, is just, and it got me thinking about my own, like, just how I live my life sometimes, is like how distracted we've all become. And I mean, I witnessed so many spectators. I mean, you saw this because I'll be honest, I almost got into a couple of dust ups.
It's like, he's not with me, man.
Yeah, Mike was like ashamed that I was like, it was like,
no, I was on your side. I was just,
yeah, I know you were, but you're much less confrontational than I am. But they're coming. There's these athletes screaming around a corner at Ohio 70.3 coming in, and there's just people just on their phones with their dogs and their kids, like they're going like 20, 25 mile an hour around this hairpin turn, and they're just walking around oblivious. People are just oblivious to so many things and in their own world, and they just assume that it's okay. And it just totally chapped me. I had to get a little grumpy with some people, but it was all for safety's sake. And I just think that, being present is something that we could all do a better job at, not being so distracted and just taking, responsibility for our own actions and owning our space and being intentional with everything that we do, and not just kind of, cruise controlling it through life.
Yeah.
And I think we could be a lot more successful in triathlon and our personal lives if we were not just fine with being on cruise, but we just, and it's hard because it requires discipline now, because everything that we do and we touch, and this goes with training as well. I mean, is you can be on cruise control and just kind of go through the motions, or you can be intentional with things, and you can be engaged, you can show discipline. And I just think that I know people who are incredibly disciplined and incredibly focused, and they have a totally different demeanor about them than other athletes and people I know that kind of have that. It's like they're just letting the world rotate around them, and they really don't care. But then on the flip side, it's also like, woe is me. Like your greatest action is to show no action at all until no action turns into something you don't like, and then it's, woe is me and the world is out to get me. I just think that I think we could all do a better job, and something that I'm I want to be adamant about my own personal life and training and in coaching, having left this weekend, and in many ways just is to be more intentional and more focused and more present on everything that I do more often, and then just appreciate, the opportunities that we have, the people we get to meet, the races we get to do, our life in general, and say thank you, and just be more present, and be more disciplined and intentional with everything that I do, both personally and professionally.
Yeah, and you want spectators to respect the course as well as the athletes.
That's my biggest thing, man.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised, to be honest with you. I mean, obviously you probably weren't as surprised as me because you spectated so many of these, but it was kind of beyond me, and it was beyond me about how unfocused, and I don't know, I was kind of in shock, just like how unfocused people were, that they couldn't possibly be in the way or standing in the middle of the run course, or literally be standing in the middle of a hairpin turn on the bike course when just a second ago somebody came screaming around that corner. If they'd walked in there a minute ago, they would have been toast.
Yeah, and I just think a lot of people sort of don't know what's going on, and I kind of get it, because there's a lot of moving parts in triathlon versus, a lot of people I'm sure have witnessed marathons and things like that, and sort of this slow unfolding thing. But triathlon kind of has an element of hurry up, and there's just different speeds going on. So I kind of get it on some level, but yeah, I think that's it. And I was just trying to use that as sort of a segue into, respecting the course, because like you said earlier, I think you think that Ohio kind of has a reputation at least being sort of potentially a fast race. And I think it's so easy to kind of like do all your training, get to a point, and then say, you know what, I'm really ready for this course, and I've done my 100 milers, and now this is just a flat 50 or whatever. And the one thing people don't even they look at the temperatures, but I don't know many people that really get kind of into the wind question. They don't even really think about it that morning or whatever. And we talked about it many times, like how people go out to the expo like the day before, at the lake, and it was 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and they're checking in their stuff and and they look out at the lake and it's choppy, and they're like, man, the lake was really bad today, I hope it's not that bad tomorrow. But what they don't think about is usually in the morning it's a lot calmer in general. And to your point, always is like, get in that water soon as you can, even if you're a little scared, because the longer you're in the water, the more chance you're going to have wind on the bike, and it just picks up in the afternoon. But
it picks up
in the general scope of things. I think it's just a great lesson to always, no matter what race you're doing, quote unquote easy races, flat races, whatever case is, you have to respect the course, because how many people we see just get eaten alive yesterday on what many would call probably a fast course.
It's one of those things that you don't predict yet, and I think it always goes back to when you look at a race and you see faster results and you see pretty good bike splits, you assume that is the course 24/7 every single day of the year.
Yep.
And we talk about this all the time about why it's so difficult to judge yourself race to race or PR to PR in every race, when every single day is different. Because I raced last year, and not only is just the competition different from week to week or from year to year at specific races, but the weather and the conditions. So like, I think the first year Ohio 70.3 is actually wetsuit legal. Last 2 years it hasn't been, or maybe the first 2 years. I think it's maybe the third or fourth year of it's running, but and so that's slower. And then the bike course last year, very fast. I can't even remember any wind last year. This year, significantly different. I would say it was probably 10 to 15 miles an hour. Although we had that typical triathlete guy that came out to our dinner table last night and said it had to have been at least 30 to 35 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Which, let's be honest, it was not that. But, when you're in the moment, that's what you kind of think, like, oh, this is horrible. And the bad thing is that you're into it for the whole time. You're headed back the same direction. So you're in it for like 20, 25 miles. And even if you make a turn, you get relief for but a second, because then the next turn you make is right back, whatever it was, going north or south, whatever direction it was. So you're right back into it. And it's just one of those things that, and the hardest part is when you've had these enormous expectations going into a race and for a bike split, and you come out of the water. And I would venture to say most people got out of the water yesterday very disappointed. I mean, I saw a lot of disappointed faces coming out of the water yesterday, because even though, and if you're listening to this podcast, you may have listened last week, it's a slow swim, and it was fairly slow. And I kind of gauge that as a coach as well, as like when I see an athlete come out of the water, I'm like, hey, that's a pretty good split. Because I honestly, I added 3 to 4 minutes for no wetsuit in those conditions based on the way that I know the Ohio swim is. And so you got people already coming out of the water who are somewhat deflated. It's probably already looking like, 8:30, 8:45, and they've looked at the swim and be like, all right, now I'm already 10 or 15 minutes behind schedule. Like the race and the conditions gives a rat's about what racing PR schedule you've put in TriCalc. That now means you're 15 minutes. And so you hop on the bike, and you may or may not know you've just had a tailwind, and you're flying. You're like, oh, I'm doing a crush it. And then you make this turn, and then it's like standing in front of a blow dryer for an hour and a half. And it is demoralizing. It is frustrating. It is humbling. And so you have some people who probably listen to their bodies and are like, you know what? I got to keep the power the same, and I'm going to lower my expectations, or I'm going to lower the effort, and I'm just going to stick with what I've got, and I'm not going to try to maintain miles per hour, because then I'm going to blow up on the run. But most people, well, not most people, because I don't know this, but I bet you a lot of people love seeing that, because to be honest, if you want to compound it, they already had it, because you start off going the shorter way, which was with the tailwind. So let's say you're averaging like 20 miles an hour. You're like, oh, here I go, baby, crushing it, PR today, catching up from the swim. Then you make that turn, and for the next hour and a half, you see 20, 19.9, 19.8, 19.7, 19, 18.8. And that's, again, like why watching numbers and watching miles per hour is the worst possible thing to do, because you know what? It's just going to be what it's going to be. And so many times I think we give ourselves so much extra credit based on us rather than combining us versus the elements. And because it's always a combination of the two. It's never just you. It's you and the elements. The same way you could go out for a 45-minute run when it's, so for example, like it was really cool in Chattanooga last Thursday before I went to Ohio, and I had one of my best long runs of the year. Did it mean I just jumped a minute and a half in pace overnight? No, it's because it was 60 and not 95. And so I think that it was more demoralizing. But yeah, wind is tough. And then the run yesterday was significantly hotter. There was not much, if any, cloud cover. And it seemed, at least where I was standing, that the amount of wind they got on the bike was basically non-existent on the run. Because I don't remember ever feeling a cool breeze out there. And I'm sure, obviously a lot of the runners would probably agree they didn't feel that that generous breeze they got on the bike on the run. But it made for a tough day. And I was kind of surprised to see as many exploded, triathletes on the run for having, just totally bonked. But when you think about the conditions and pacing, and you're out there significantly longer, and then as you touched on just a second ago, is that one of the other main reasons that I tell athletes to get in the water ASAP is because what oftentimes you see is sometimes the slower athletes who may get in the water so race start was at 7 a.m. Some of the slower athletes who see themselves way far in the back, who may not be, as experienced, and just a little bit slower, more towards the back of the pack, for whatever reason, they get in the water at 7:50. They might swim in an hour, maybe right an hour. They get through transition. We're going to call it 9 o'clock. Okay, So they're on the course at 9 o'clock. A lot of them have poor positions. A lot of them are already working slower, and the wind has already started to pick up. Versus an athlete who got in the water at 7, swam for 30 minutes, has been on the bike course for an hour and a half. He's probably covered 30-something miles already before they've covered one. And the wind just continues, as we all noticed from, participating in this thing called life, the wind picks up throughout the day. So it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And then what you often see a lot of times too is some of those slower athletes are beginners. So they've got, you don't want to go out and buy some super expensive bike and get in an aero position. They're sitting up on a road bike, which again makes it significantly harder. When you have a headwind, there's just so many factors that can compound and add up and keep continuously adding layers and layers and layers to making things more difficult. And then you hop off and you're like, oh, great. Now I get off the bike in the hottest part of the day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things. And again, like, that's why I get the rolling start. I get it. But that's why I'm always going to be such a huge fan as well as the mass start, because I think it helps level the playing field for a lot of athletes like that to get it in the water ASAP.
Yeah.
And to be out there in some of the more fair, because if you think about it, it's just the conditions continue to get worse for a specific part of the population who, for some of them, might need the most ideal conditions to compete at the level that they want to and participate the way that they want to, versus the opposite, and that's something that if you watched race directors, like I know Muncie used to do this, and I think even Ohio did this the first year when it was waves, is that what race directors would usually do a lot of times is they would try to time it, where they would put some of the slower waves in first, and obviously intermingle some of the faster, demographics, like, 25, 29 females and then up, and then males are the same. So everyone kind of gets out of the water close to the same time, or is getting off the bike course at the same time, because it helps condense the amount of time they're having to hold up traffic. And it helps everyone kind of come together at the end of the race kind of at the same time, because anytime you can condense things, it's easier to manage. And with the rolling start, and you got people at 7, you got people getting in the water at 8. I'm sure I know there's a guy who got in the water at 7 who swam like a 27 and then was off the bike probably before a lot of these athletes were even getting to like mile 10. And this athlete got to participate in the I'm not saying it's like shame on this guy for being so fast. But I guess the point I'm trying to say is that, like, the conditions aren't the same for everyone. Just like the dynamics of a pro race are so much different than a age group race. And so I just think that these are all things that, I guess, super long-winded story short, is these are things you need to think about, because I can tell you and I can promise you from personal experience, and then also from athletes that I spoke to yesterday after the race, there is just as much contact no matter where you start.
Yeah, that's the other thing, right?
Kicked in the chin, kicked in the neck, swam over. And this is from athletes who got in at 7:10 and athletes who got in the water at 7:50. So if that's going to be your excuse, you need to rethink it. Get in the water, get out ahead of the day. And again, my other kind of tidbit was, anytime you can get on the course and be out there with it as clean as possible, with as least amount of people as possible, because to me, the most difficult obstacle on race day is the other athletes. And anytime I can get on the bike course with the least amount of athletes on it, the better. And then if I can get on the run course without having to deal with the most amount of athletes, the better. Because the more athletes you add more human error, you add more bad decisions, you add more egos, and all those are things I would love to limit as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it was in a way a perfect storm for the bad decisions, because as you talked about, like the water was tough. That's always a tough swim. We saw, I was taking photos, and again, I've been to many, many races, and I kind of get a sense for how the swim was. You can kind of just see it in everybody's face, and not everybody, but like 90% of the people look like they had just been through a battle coming out of that water, whether it's the non-wetsuit thing or just it's the temperature of the water, whatever the case, it was a tough swim, I could tell. And then you get out on that bike, and then you're cruising, like you said, and then you get that 25 miles into the wind situation. That's not good. And you got the timing of it all, because the sun, a lot of people, and even I don't think about this all the time, and I should, is like, when do I run? It's like, if there's some, decent sized trees and that sun's not straight above you, normally you get a little bit of shade, but the timing of everything, by the time you got off the bike, was that sun was right, where you could not escape it, basically. And like you said, there's no clouds, and you could and that was the other place I could really see it. When that run started, man, the people were lathered, and it was almost, they looked almost like they were at the end of the race at the beginning, and I was like, this is not going to be a good run for a lot of people, just because you could see it in their eye. They were trying, they're like, all right, here we go, I'm going to go run, but you could and if you looked at their body and what their kit looked like and the whole, they just looked really disheveled. There wasn't any like freshness that I saw, hardly at all. I mean, I just didn't see it.
And it just goes back
to the super fast runners were out there. Yeah. They look like they're struggling on mile one.
And if you go back to just the, like the elements of like, and how important and why you just, if you're that person, you need to stop neglecting the swim. I got to spectate Chattanooga 70.3 and you didn't, but we were both there for Ohio, and the amount of jubilation and like actual cheers you heard and smiles you heard from people getting out of the water at Chattanooga 70.3, it was like Mardi Gras. People were stoked. They're like, oh, it's like best time ever, and they're like, if you think about it, like the mentality and the duration and the intensity you have to keep up for a race like a 70.3, like what better feeling to feel that way getting out of the water, like, oh, I'm set up for success like today, because there's nothing better than having a great start, right? So you have a great start today, you have a great cup of coffee, you get 9 hours of sleep, your favorite song comes on the radio when your alarm clock goes off, you pop out of bed and you're ready to rock, versus like you wake up late, there's a crummy song on, you spill your first cup of coffee. 2 different days are about to happen right now. Well, the swim is the same way. So people get out of the Chattanooga 7.3 swim. They're like, baby, I'm killing it. Here I go. Made it. Doing their arm pump, dancing, twirling. Yesterday, I saw more head shakes like the no head shake than I've ever seen in my entire life. People looked gassed. And you could see it on their face that it was like an immediate kick in the gut. Like, I knew that was going to suck, and I knew that was going to be slow, but I didn't think I was going to be that slow. And you could see this, like, the hardest thing is now you have to see them rewrapping their entire day around their mind. Like, I was so excited for this day, and it's supposed to be a super fast course. I'm not going to make it because, as the old adage is, you'll never be able to win it in the swim, but you sure can lose it. And that doesn't go for just the winner of the race. That goes for you personally. And I just think that it's and obviously you can still have athletes that work incredibly hard, and then just have a bad day. But I think that's why swimming, I think, is again so underrated and so hard to figure out too for athletes, and kind of like a puzzle, is that it's how you kick off the day, and you can have a great start or a not great start, and then you have to kind of revamp your mindset and your approach, and it's hard, but I think it was a tough day overall.
Yeah. And I've been in that situation with the swim, and you've seen it many, many times. And my first thought is, after a bad, you start the bad day and you struggle through the swim, and then with my mentality, it's always, all right, now I'm going to show them. And so
yeah, you talked about that. Yeah, I know.
I had a bad, if I have a bad swim, like really bad, and I get out and I'm like, well, I got to pick this up immediately on the bike. And if you've got good conditions, that might be possible. But when you come out of the swim and you think you've struggled, and that was, I think, an illusion that a lot of people probably had, because you can tell them a million times it's a slow swim and expect this or whatever, but they're used to swimming 33 minutes for 2,000 in the pool, and they get out of Ohio Swim and they're at 41 minutes. That's just a day ruiner. It's like 8 minutes or whatever difference, and then you're going to go try and make that up on the bike, and sure enough, that wind's at your back, and you're like, I'm in the game. And like you said, then you turn that corner and you come in and you're hitting a headwind for 20 miles, and you still got to prove it. But about 10 miles later, your run is over, basically.
Exactly.
And you fight and you get done, and you make up a little time on your bike maybe, but like you said, the power numbers, or in my case, the perceived power numbers, are way out of whack. and you hit that run with that sun beating down and, you know, hot concrete or hot pavement, and, you know, people were running on the gravel coming out of transition, because I don't, you know, whether or not that's a technique that I don't understand, but I mean, yeah, you're going to run on rocks.
Yeah, I hear you.
Instead of, because it's too hard or too hot, or I don't know what the deal is, but
yeah, who knows, man?
Maybe it works. I don't know. But so yeah.
I mean, listen, there's always something to learn.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? I mean, there's so much to learn. Like you could, you know, like I said, I've been to so many of these races. You've coached hundreds and hundreds of athletes for these things, and I'm sure that you're over there going, man, this is like an endless puzzle.
It is, man, and I think that's, you know, I guess, you know, it kind of in closing, like that's the thing, is like it's always an endless puzzle. There's always something to learn. We never have it all figured out. It's because even if you have a great race, it's always what's next. The work of the athlete and the work of the coach is never done, because the goal is consistent and constant movement or improvement towards one direction, and fixing things that might not have worked this time and adapting and trying something new, or sticking with what's working because it's working and we're not going to change it, because that takes patience and control and humility as well. And so it's just, that's why the sport is so great, is that it, you know, if you allow it that opportunity and you look at it in that, you know, through that lens of it, the day might not have gone how my expectations wanted it to line up, but I learned so much. And the thing about triathlon is that you don't often understand you need to learn something until you've just had the lesson. Mm-hmm. And if you can take that, you can use it, and then you can take it to your next race and to your next training cycle, apply it, adapt it, take what you learned, focus, be disciplined, be intentional, and then do the best that you can.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, I don't know. I guess we're wrapping up here, so we can kind of go a little deeper. I think next time. We're both a little fatigued, and it was all in all. I thought it was a great weekend. I mean, I really enjoy it. You know what I mean? It's just like It's so nice just to be around the sport. I think it's amazing. I think that we have to keep that in our sights and realize that, you know, obviously Steve Del Monte's made that saying, we're playing triathlon famous.
Yep.
And it's catching more and more steam, and I hope it does, because there's nothing. You can see a lot of times it's like the people who have been around the sport the longest time that kind of, like you said, they sort of take it day by day. They just know what it is, and you can, you know, I used to go up to these veteran guy, because I'm an older age group, and there's a lot of times there's guys who've been racing like 15, 20 years, and I'd be like, yeah, today I'm going to do this, I'm going to take this, and I'm going to do this, and they're like, all right, and they just kind of walk away or whatever, because it's just sort of like, what's the day going to hold? Every day is a new day, and just do the best you can and have fun with it, because you just can't predict it.
Do the best you can and have fun with it. I like that.
Yeah, because it's a tough one to master, for sure.
You've never mastered it. If you think you have, then you're about to get another lesson. Yeah,
no kidding. It's so true.
So true. But hey, again, we appreciate you sticking with us. Sorry for the delay today. We will be back as usual, hopefully better than ever on Thursday. If you want to be part of the Facebook conversation, you can hop into our closed group, which is Crushing Iron Group. Then you can search that. We'll let you in. If you want to check out all the other things that we do, you can always hop on crushingiron.com, which is our kind of our one-stop shop. Information on our triathlon and swim camps, information on our coaches, different training and coaching packages we offer, swim analysis, our blog, gear, other videos, and fun things to check out. So always check that out, crushingiron.com. And if you have any questions about anything or comments or just general conversational items, you can reach out to Mike, crushingiron@gmail.com, or you can always reach out to me directly as well, C26coach@gmail.com.
Okay, buddy, had a great weekend.
Yeah, really man, nice. Me too. And I'll see you on Friday.
That's right. All right, see you on Friday. More.
All right, dude.
See you.